museum became a thought in the very early 70s. I'd had a successful business career. As you can see, I come from Birmingham, or you can hear I come from Birmingham. And I wanted something to do in retirement. Although looking back over my life, the thought of retirement is horrifying. I couldn't retire. But nevertheless, the thought was there, the seed was planted, and the museum actually became a reality when it opened in October 1984. But of course the planning of it and the building of it and the raising of the finance for it had been an ongoing situation for 6 or 7 years. Originally, the museum was planned to be a couple of miles from here on the estate of Lord Aylesford. He offered land at a peppercorn rent, but unfortunately it was impossible to get planning permission. We had been advised by the county planner that we would get permission on that site, but after an application, then a costly appeal, we failed to get planning permission. Fortunately, and I can only repeat fortunately, the county planner was embarrassed and he guided us to this site, which is so superb. It's a blessing that we didn't get the original site. The location here is superb. We're at the heart of the motorway network. We're only a mile or so from Birmingham Airport. We're only a mile or so from Birmingham International Station. So access to get here is absolutely first class. In that case, we're extremely fortunate. My first bike was a 1946 ES2 Norton, brand new on my 16th birthday. From there I progressed to an international Norton, which was the sporty version in those days. In fact, Jeff Duke won his first ever road race on an international Norton, the Clubman's TT in the Isle of Man, and we're so fortunate we've actually got that machine now on display here. They were affordable. They catered for the needs of a thrusting young chap, I expect. They were healthy. I never had a cold in those years. And the freedom, it was lovely. But of course, in those days, the number of cars on the road was only a minor percentage of what are there today. And when you did come off, and I did come off on 1 or 2 occasions, the risk of being run over by an oncoming car was fairly negligible. They brought transportation at a cost that working people could afford. They were able to go out at weekends with the families if they had a sidecar attached, or their girlfriends and wives riding pillion before they reached that stage. It was a very convenient, and I said affordable, method of transport. And you say, why were motorcycles important in the 20th century? They were important for the economic viability of our country. Not many people will know, but I'll give you two statistical facts. From the turn of the century up until the 70s or early 70s, there were 596 different British manufacturers. Today, I think there's only one left. We had a world, and I repeat, world market penetration of 90%. That means that 90% of all motorcycles built in the entire world were built here in Britain. You think of the export benefits of that. Colossal achievement, but of course it's all gone. What was the innovation? Well, there was a lot over the years. The attached engine to what was basically a bicycle. Then the development of frames to house an engine, the development of brakes, the change from belt drive to chain drive to shaft drive. There's been a lot of developments. And when you look at a machine built in 1902, for example, with one built today, they're hardly recognisable. Well, life had been good to me. There was a motorcycle museum, and it was suggested to me, why don't you do it? It seemed a good idea, and I did it. I'm not a believer in nepotism, and I wanted to put back into life, may sound a bit corny, but it's true, I wanted to put back into life what I'd taken out of it. And here we are today, and I'm pleased that we did it. The idea was to get one of everything. It was a grand ambition. Whilst we have got a colossal cross-section of the 500 odd manufacturers, there's still a long, long way to go. I think we've got about examples of about 160 manufacturers. I mean, some of them have long gone out of existence. Machines that they made have lost forever. So there's no hope ever of getting one of everything. If we ultimately get one of 250, we will have done well. Obviously, our intent was to have machines in perfect ex-factory condition. Well, it's impossible to find those of the older machines. In fact, newer ones. So we had to collect the machines. Then I had to recruit skilled restorers, and initially to do it part-time. And gradually the collection was built up until when we opened in '84, we fielded about 280 fully restored, ex-factory condition machines. It was quite an achievement. We raised as much money as we could with a team of helpers. We sold the raffle tickets. However we could possibly raise money. I was able to sink in a fair bit myself. And by the time we opened in October '84, with the cost of the machines, the restoration of them and the building of the museum, we'd spent about £2 million. When I look back, I wonder how the hell we did it. We did well. Yeah, we did. Because it's a different story now. I mean, obviously we'd got the benefit of people visiting and paying admission fees. So there was an improvement in our cash flow, but we soon found out it wasn't enough. We got to find some source of increased revenue. And when I said earlier that the site was superb for our needs, we soon had people calling us to see if we'd got meeting rooms. And I remember vividly one man coming to the museum one day and said, "Have you got a room where we can hold a meeting?" Well, we had one. We'd built a room on the upper floor for clubs to meet. And we let that room out at £50 a day for a week. And it soon became apparent that we could generate more cash doing that than enticing people through the turnstiles. And from that early opportunity, we have developed a very substantial conference and banqueting facility that now will see us safe financially forever. And that has provided the means to expand the museum, to buy rare and expensive models, to increase the number of machines on exhibition from 280 to 800. That was before the devastating fire we had. Jeff Duke, he's a very famous TT rider, he opened it. It was an extremely happy day. The place was absolutely heaving with people. We had cash registers ringing away. And I thought to myself, we've made it. We're going to be so successful. There's going to be thousands of people coming through all the time. And we home and dry. And we had just a little party, I suppose you'd call it, for all the people that had helped. And some important local people. One of those people was the boss of the National Exhibition Centre. And at the end, he came across and he said, "Are you happy?" I said, deliriously. He said, "Well, I'm not going to try and upset you, but I'm going to give you a word of advice." He said, "All these people, you've taken a lot of money today, but tomorrow the place will be empty." And I thought, how can you be so damn stupid? People are coming from everywhere. But he was right. He said, people living within a 50-mile radius of this place will not even know it exists. He said it was just the same at the NEC. Only those people living far and wide will have heard about it and they will come. And it'll take 5 years before the floodgates open. Now, I thought that was ridiculous, but I tell you what, he was so right. So the importance of generating revenue from another source became so important, and we were lucky. Because of the position that we're in, we were able to do that. It was doing extremely well. Extremely well. The museum was expanding. Our conference and banqueting facilities were healthy. They were generating the cash needed to develop the museum. Every penny that came surplus from that activity went into the museum. We were able to acquire some rare machines which cost into 6 figures, such as an IJS Porcupine, which cost £100,000. There were several like that. I mean, when you think about that sort of money for an exhibit, one wonders whether people would think you're mad. But it's part of that great British success story. And rather than them going overseas, because they were ready buyers, we managed to keep quite a number of them here. So it was success all the way. But there was a lot of hard work put into it, I can assure you. It just didn't come standing still. But we climbed up to, I think it was 830 in 2003. I mean, the restoration of them was a colossal task. We had, on average, throughout the entire period, 3, sometimes 4. Being a costly operation, you have to watch the pennies. At least, to do it properly, up to £10,000 each machine. It was in September 2003. And I was sitting up here interviewing someone who I wanted to join us. And the man who built this for me and been with me ever since, and he'd done work in other areas, he said, there's a puff of smoke coming out of the roof right over on the back. I'd better nip across and see what it is. By which time, the fire alarms are going crazy. And I stopped the interview because, I mean, this whole complex is my life. And I went across, and yes, there was smoke coming out of the tiles in the roof. No evidence of fire, none whatsoever. That was about 10 minutes to 5. The fire alarms had been going off. Now, we had a most sophisticated system connected to the fire station, and they should have been here within minutes. But there was no appliance. So I was shouting to ring 999 and get them here quick. But what had happened had been a hold up on the M42, and they were having difficulty getting through, so they said. Now, it would have been at least, at the very least, 25 minutes, half an hour, before flames were apparent coming out of the roof. When the fire appliance got here, followed by 2 or 3 more, they didn't know where to get the water. Now, there are hydrants all round the site. Outside of the site, as hydrants are. But they didn't know where they were. Anyway, eventually they hooked into them. The pressure was low, and flames were then developing. Eventually, they had to take hoses over to a lake called the Pendigo Lake at the NEC and draw water from that. But it was too late then. The place was alight. Hall 5, which is the furthest exhibition hall away, housed all our racing machines, the most valuable machines that we got by a long way. That was at the heart of the fire. To see that as blazing inferno was not only heartbreaking, it could make some people suicidal with the work and the effort that had gone into getting them there. Anyway, to cut a long story short, I literally watched the place burn to the ground. And the disappointment was that I am sure, along with dozens of other people, that it could have been arrested much earlier than it was. They made 2 fire breaks and let the rest burn out. I went out at about 3 o'clock in the morning, was back here at daybreak, and to see the smouldering wreckage, it was terrible.
When I heard about the fire, I was in Shell Island near Harlech in Wales, taking a few days off, and we'd only been there less than a day, and we had a phone call, or my wife had a phone call on a mobile from her daughter-in-law to say that she'd heard there'd been a fire at the National Motorcycle Museum. And my first thoughts were, this is a wind-up, that it was my daughter-in-law playing us up because we'd gone away for a few days. However, my wife phoned my own daughter back and asked if she'd heard anything about the fire. And she said that she hadn't, but she said if she'd heard anything, she'd ring us back. Well, that was about 5:30 in the afternoon. Obviously, the 6 o'clock news came on, and she rang us back at 6:05 to say the museum has been devastated with this serious fire, which was totally unbelievable. I just couldn't come to terms with it. So we had to get back as soon as we possibly could, and I managed to get back about 10:30 on the same evening, and rang Mr. Richards to see how badly it was damaged, and he said it was serious and worse than you could ever imagine. And I came in on a Wednesday morning to come in first, to walk straight over to the hall we're in now, in Hall 5, which was all the racing machines, to see it totally destroyed, and all the machines that I'd been working on for 30 years were virtually all gone, and one could only imagine it was just, the only comparison was something like it would have been in the war and the Blitz. To see all these smouldering wrecks that totally devastating. It was like losing a member of your family. It couldn't be any worse. It was sort of everywhere you looked, there was this total devastation of everything that I'd worked on for the last 30 years had gone. Except, obviously, it wasn't all. There were some that were saved, but everywhere you looked, it was just total destruction.
It was claimed that a cigarette end had started it. There's no proof of that. No proof at all.
Well, I was in America at the time, and I heard about it. My daughter phoned me and said that there'd been a fire at the museum. And so, of course, when I come back, I knew what to expect. Bill and all the lads would be here stripping bikes. And sure enough, they was. They'd been here for 3 weeks stripping bikes. And so, of course, I joined them and helped out. And it's taken a long while. But they are coming on now. You know, they're beginning to look reasonable anyway, you know. So, but a good job we're about. If it had been another 10 years, we wouldn't have been about. You know, we not working on bikes anyway.
Of the 800 odd machines, 400 went in various stages of destruction. some destroyed to a virtually irreparable state. Others were capable of careful restoration. And I'm proud to say, and I am proud to say, that of the 400 lost, nearly 200 of them are back. I was inundated with people offering help, but knowing and being aware of the quality of restoration that we achieved, most of them had to be kindly turned away. People will help and people say they can do this and other things, but the final result is not what you want. But we did get some good people.
This bike is the one that Percy Tate used to ride. He was the works rider. So this bike got all the prototype stuff tried out on it first. Sometimes that worked, sometimes it didn't. But it was quite interesting. It did well in '71. I think it's probably our favourite year. It was 1970. I was Percy's mechanic at the time, and we won quite a few championships that year, including the first ever Motorcycle News Superbike champion, which now runs into a national, is it, or a world championship either. But we won the Coupe d'Endurance, we won the 24-hour race, not on this machine but on the one that's in the museum at Le Mans. Well, quite a few useful wins in '71. It had a few problems in its days, as they all did. What you see here is the latest incarnation of it. It was obviously badly damaged in the fire, but we've tried to get it back as it was as near as we can, and I would say it's as good as we could get it, as good as it ever was, I would think. Yeah, it's a 750 Trident, based on the production Trident T150 of the time. It's a special frame made by Rob North. It's a special space frame, very strong. Problem was they were sort of one-offs, so you couldn't fit one part from one to another. They were all handmade for each frame. It has what we call a squish design cylinder head. That's where the piston actually protrudes into the cylinder head combustion chamber. Ran on something like 13:1 compression ratio. Brake horsepower for this one was about 86 brake horsepower, which in its day was quite good for a pushrod engine. Nowadays it's nowhere near. What else can we say? It's a pushrod engine, of course, yeah, so it's not over a head can like most modern engines are.
How badly damaged was it in the fire?
This one was very bad. Just about all the aluminium cases around the outside had melted. It was so bad the gearbox casting had melted and the gears had fallen out the back. Just about everything that could burn had burned. There was no plastic or rubber. Even the wheels had melted. All there was a few spokes left. The hubs were melted. So it was pretty bad. Fortunately, we did have quite a few bits around us which were used as patterns to remake it. Disc brakes. Originally the discs were aluminium, but they were metal sprayed. This was good because they were very lightweight. Sadly we couldn't reproduce those because no one is making these anymore, and I don't know where we'd get them made. AP Racing have supplied the brake calipers. They've actually remade a batch of these for us, as well as the master cylinders, both back and front. We haven't got the front one on yet, that's away being modified. What else can we say? The wiring was all destroyed, of course. We've had to rewire all the bikes, make new harnesses. Our little black boxes on here, that's the ignition system. Nothing electronic, it's just a fairly straightforward Zener diode capacitor discharge system, which worked pretty well in the old days, 35 years ago, and hopefully still will. Yeah, the fairing, of course, these are reproduced from the original design, obviously all fiberglass. The slot in the front was obviously for the oil cooler, which is mounted inside here, and then it's piped down to the oil tank. These were quite a good fairing in their day. They're very strong, if a little heavy, that's the problem, but they did the job well.
I started at Triumph's 1946 and went into the army afterwards, came out, went back to Triumph's. That was it. Then we went racing, and we stayed there until 73 when the Triumph closed. We went to Kitts Green. All of us went, more or less, the experimental department, and stayed there for 2 years, and then was demobbed. Yes, it's a normal BSA Rocket 3, which we always called a Triumph. Always. It was always got Triumph written on the fairings, and Ray Pickerel rode it. He didn't like a red bike, so he wanted a blue one. So rather than have a blue BSA, he'd got to have a blue Triumph, so we painted it blue. And yeah, he liked it, he rode well on it, and he was very good. It's in the same state of tune as the others, really. It's a very similar bike, very similar. There's only little tiny differences between all of them, you know. Yes, the gearbox lay on the floor. It had melted the gearbox, and the gearbox had actually come out, you know, onto the floor. As all of them were. Percy's was, I think, was the worst of the lot. Percy Tate. That was really gone. It's had everything done, really. Frame, engine, the forks have been done, and everything's been to bring it back up to new sort of standard. And let's hope it is.
You know, I've said this to many people throughout my life. It's only the weak that quit. How on earth could I turn my back on it? Having preached that gospel to people, I had no option. But in any case, whether I'd said that to people or not, of course it had got to be resurrected. There'd been too much achieved not to want to do it all over again. Two days after the fire, I had a telephone call from a man called Dennis Tackett from Dallas, Texas. Now, we were the proud owners of a Triumph Streamliner, which was built in the United States by the Texas Triumph dealer in the mid-50s. It went to the Bonneville Salt Flats and it broke the world's land speed record. The Triumph Bonneville got its name from that. Now, this machine was dismantled and it was put in the loft of this man's workshop, and it lay there until we decided we'd ask if it still existed. Eventually it did exist, and eventually we bought it. And it was a very important exhibit here. It was at the heart of the fire and it was destroyed. Now, it was a long cigar-looking object. To recreate that from scratch was virtually impossible. But when this fellow from Texas, Dallas, telephoned, he said, the original moulds are still in existence. The men that built it, 3 of them are still alive. Would you like us to rebuild it? Cost a fair amount of money, but nevertheless, the remains were put in a box, shipped to Dallas, and 1 week before we opened, it came back breathtaking, an absolute perfect rebuild. What better help could you get than that? There were several people like that who wanted just to do something. They've done it, and we're very, very thankful. Well, we lost virtually all our racing bikes, 90 of them. I mean, the rebuilding of the museum was a colossal project. It's all steel framed. All the steel columns and the roof beams, they were all just twisted and lying in every direction. And it was a sad, sad sight. 3 or 4 experts in their own right have taken on the task of the reconstruction of maybe 24 of them. We had every works Triumph triple racer. Took us a long time to gather them together, and a costly operation, but we'd got them. They were so successful, it's not true. And a man called Les Williams, who was foreman of the Triumph race shop, who had built all of them originally, of course with help. I appealed to him and he said, okay, I'll take it on. We gathered 6 of the old factory mechanics who had all retired, and all these elderly gentlemen came together. They took on about 13 machines and ancillary stuff. They're all back, like brand new.
This is the Malcolm Uphill, 1969, Triumph Bonneville production race TT winner. First bike to lap the island, first production race to lap the island at 100 mile an hour. Was very badly burnt in the fire. Restored by the Triumph, the old employees of the Triumph racing team. It's basically a 650 Triumph Bonneville, similar to this one, which is the standard version. And we ran these from 1967 to 1969. And after that, we continued with the Triumphs, which led on to the Trident production races. I think most people know this one. This is the Slippery Sam, winner of 5 production TTs, again very badly burnt in the fire and restored by the same ex-works mechanics. It's Arthur Jakeman, Bill Fannon, Steve Brown, John Woodward, Fred Swift, Jack Shemmins. Jack supplied technical assistance. We were in the racing team from 1967 till when did we finish? 1973. We did mostly experimental work and the racing preparation, from taking a production bike off the assembly track, bring it down through the experimental department, and then modifying them and preparing them and tuning them for racing. this was almost totally burnt out. All the soft materials were burnt completely. These have been replacements. We've managed to keep all the forks, frames, wheels, and basically a full restoration and rebuild. And no real problems. We would basically strip this from burnt components, salvage anything that was usable, and then replace and have specially made like for like. So, for instance, these are original still. The front hub's still original, but obviously the wheel rims are gone, so they're totally rebuilds. New tyres, a new fairing's been made. That was made in Ross. New seat. The engines have been totally rebuilt, repaired and rebuilt, but keeping most of the original parts. And similar all through the bike, and as you can see, it's been, repainted and refettled. I think Roy Richards was so dedicated, and so we went along with him. He asked us to come back and do these bikes, so I got most of the team together. And when you consider Slippery Sam, which is I've been connected with most of my adult life, working life, was burnt to a frazzle, and it needed a lot of. We took the job on, and we said we'd do the best we could, and I think we've done a pretty good job. Well, how did we restore this? First of all, you soak everything. It was badly burnt. So you soak everything in red diesel. So this engine was immersed in red diesel for a week, perhaps, and then we strip it. But normally when you strip a race engine, you can strip one of these engines in 4 or 5 hours. Probably took us 4 or 5 days to strip this engine, because we had to strip everything very carefully, and everything was sort of practically not welded together, but stuck together with shellac, burnt oil and all that type of thing. So we take the engine completely to pieces. Then we get everything vapor blasted, which we don't normally do, but vapor blasted, and then aqua cleaned afterwards to shake all the dirt out. We examine all the components. We had to get new camshafts. Luckily, there's a specialist, George Hopwood in London, who still specialises in the parts for these. So luckily he had some original camshafts which we had to use. He had an original gearbox, or gear cluster, which we had to use. Then the frame was badly bent, badly twisted. This was jigged by Rustler Racing in Birmingham, which at great expense. Took days and weeks to do. And then we come on to the cycle parts, forks the same treatment, wheel hubs we kept. We had to have new rims, new tyres obviously. The exhaust system was straightened out, so that's the original exhaust system. We had to have new carburetors, they'd burnt away. This petrol tank, which is made in aluminium by a specialist up in the man who made this tank is Don Woodward, who made all the racing tanks from 1970. And I think the nice thing about the restoration of these bikes, they've all been restored by the original people that built them from the word go. Even the components like this. We even sourced original Monza cap, they call these Monza caps. There are patent ones made in China, but we didn't. These cost a great deal of money. These caps were worth nearly £100 each, compared to a patent cap made in China for about £30. Seat is still a basic design of the same basic moulds, again supplied by George Hopwood. The other parts, most of the other cycle parts then have been straightened out, checked and refinished. This tank is special. This is an original Thruxton tank with the outside filler cap to facilitate in the TT all checking. So that was badly damaged, but that's been opened out, repaired, straightened. This is special only to the racers. One of the original Smith's tachometers, very rare. We paid £400 for that, second hand. And actually, this bike has been rebuilt by one of the old production racers, Darrell Pendlebury. He did the basic work, but the detail work was finished off by Bill Fannin. Bill, who was the original mechanic with Malcolm. And the last thing is, of course, the fairing. Now, the fairings were very special. We only had 4 of them ever made for this machine. And in the end, we had to take a pattern of Percy Tate's 500, which was the same fairing, which is over there. And the same man who made the tanks made an aluminium fairing off this. And then AMF in Ross actually made the fiberglass off moulds made from the aluminium. So I must tell you that this is the Percy Tate racer, 1969, which we did a lot of development work for the triples. So Percy had done most of the development work on this machine, which is totally original, and Percy did all the testing for the triples, and there he is on the wall up there. He's a bit of a rascal, but he's the man that was the main race test racer, if you like, but did very well on the triples as well. This bike has been developed from 1966 until 1969. It actually won the Swedish Grand Prix in '69, and it's got a very special frame built by Triumph and Reynolds. Very special engine, very fragile but pretty powerful. It's only a 500cc, this one, and just a purely developed race bike from the late '60s.
Yes, this Jim Alves bike was originally found in Kidderminster, near Kidderminster in the Wolverley Hills. Unfortunately, it was in a very rough state. Only half the bike existed. Many parts were missing, but eventually it was restored. We got all the parts to restore it, and was originally put back in the same condition it's in now. But unfortunately, we had the fire, and I'm afraid it was very severely damaged. And then Les had the job of restoring it all again. There's no carburettor, there's no magneto, no dynamo, no mud guards, no dual seat. Did have the right petrol tank, but quite a lot. The exhaust system was missing, primary side, engine, primary cases. So it was quite a big job to actually put this back as it was originally used. We had a letter from a guy who lived in Wolverley, and it used to belong to his dad. He'd actually bought it from the Triumph factory in the 60s, and with the full intention of restoring it, but stripped it down but never actually put it back together. Now this is a 1931 AJS transverse twin. Very few of these have survived. There's possibly only 3 or 4 in existence. And it was quite a special machine in the museum, which unfortunately due to the fire was seriously damaged. Fortunately my son, Wesley Wall, he came into the museum just prior to the fire, and this was one of his first jobs to restore, and it was quite in a desperate state, and he has rebuilt it to this superb condition. Very badly damaged, and has taken a lot of sourcing the parts to rebuild it. Petrol tank now looks in perfect condition, which was due to the fire badly smashed. All the petrol tank nacelle with all the clocks and oil pressure gauge were totally smashed and unrepairable, and that have to be sourced and replaced. And exhausts and silencers have had to be remade. Dynos had to be built from bits and pieces, and carburetors the same, was badly melted. And there's quite a feat to actually get this one back in its original form of glory. The saddle was obviously burnt badly, and new springs were made, and the new interior springs underneath, those were remade, and then they were sent off to a specialist to reupholster the top to put it back to its condition as you see now.
There were other people who took on their little batches, specialists. I'm very thankful to them. Our own people. Our head restorer, Colin Wall, who literally, when he saw the fire, I actually saw him weeping like a baby. He's motivated himself well. Everybody's doing extremely well. And machines are coming back at the rate of maybe 1 a week, maybe a bit more than that on occasions. We're back virtually to where we were. 610 machines now in the museum.
This one is a 1939 Tiger 100. This was the sports version of the already famous Speed Twin. This is unusually has a very rare solid bronze head, which was sold by the company for people to use for racing at an extra cost of £5. And probably it would be worth about £1,000 now just for the cylinder head. This machine was seriously burnt in the fire and has been obviously totally restored. Everything was burnt, headlamp was smashed, petrol tank, mud guards. Fortunately the engine was sound and has only been cosmetically restored. But the rest was serious. Tyres, wheels, forks, springs had collapsed due to the heat, and now has been fully restored back to its original condition. It took approximately 3 months to restore back to its original condition. The bike was originally stripped to see the extent of the damage. Frame was slightly twisted with the heat, and so were the front forks. These were shot blasted to see the extent of the damage, and then repaired, and then sent to be resprayed and put back to the original condition. Petrol tank, the dents were serious on this machine, and the tank was, the bottom was removed, all the dents knocked out, and some re-welding work done, rebuilt, replated, painted and lined. Originally we used to have the Norton paint shop foreman, who was a brilliant coach liner, and he used to do every tank by hand. And he knew exactly what they should be. You didn't have to tell him or show him pictures, he knew exactly what they should be. But unfortunately he was in his 80s and eventually he had to retire. After he retired, it was down to me, and I had to sort of learn the art as best as I could. Just prior to the fire, my son used to do a lot of, used to have his own little chrome plating firm, but he sort of followed on from me with bikes. And he came into the museum. And this prior fire, it wasn't actually to do with the fire, and he'd asked if he could come in as a restorer. And of course, obviously, when we had the fire, it was unbelievably, Roy couldn't be thankful enough. And Wes is sort of followed on from me, and he's a very good restorer. Yeah. And he's restored both bikes either side of this Tiger 100, the Tiger 110. In fact, 1, 2, 3, 4. He's done the 4 either side. And quite a lot more bikes in here. Well, this is 500 Norton, which was built in 1933, international engine. This was built as a works machine for Vic Britain to use on trials riding. Now, this machine was acquired by the museum maybe only a couple of months before we had the disastrous fire. Was very seriously damaged in the fire, and has been fully restored since. The damage was quite dramatic. Badly burnt, mud guards seriously damaged, petrol tank seriously damaged. Obviously all the rubber work was damaged. Parts of the engine were starting to melt. Magneto, badly burnt, carburettor disappeared, melted away completely, and things had actually dropped off when the tiles off the roof, when the roof came in, and did a lot more serious damage. But what you see now is actually there isn't many replacement parts on this bike. It's all been repaired. The petrol tank was badly smashed and has been miraculously repaired. The mudguards are the originals. The wheel rims are the originals, been replated, painted and lined. The exhaust pipe is original, which was damaged, and so was the silencer, and those have been cut open, de-dented, repaired and re-chrome plated. And now the bike is back to its original form of glory.
The architects that I'd used in the past, structural engineers, they said it's going to take you 3 years to rebuild this. I said, well, we're going to do it quicker than that. I'm setting myself a target of 18 months, and they just laughed. We had to go through the process of planning permissions. You have to get planning permission even to rebuild a building that's been destroyed by fire. We'd employed in the past a very able planning barrister. The architect and the structural engineer produced their drawings rapidly. And he said, look, we're going through the normal process of planning application. He said, but get on with it. And we did. We started, the first steel work started to go up in the last week of December 2003. We opened on the 1st of December 2004. 11 months. We were told it would take 3 years, and that was done by sheer and total determination. And we've ended up with a beautiful building, better than it was before. We came under a lot of criticism for not having a sprinkler system in. But in those early days, in 1982, 84, we had a very sophisticated fire alarm system installed. No sprinklers. Couldn't afford it. It's installed now and it costs £1.2 million. The building has been reconstructed of totally inflammable material, so it'll never happen again. Never. Jeff Duke, wonderful man, into his 80s now. He reopened it, and that was a lovely, lovely thing. It was a fabulous day. We had a dinner party on the night in our Imperial Suite for, it was about 450 people. And we gave them a wow of a night. Every construction worker, everybody, the engineers and surveyors, everyone that had been involved in that murderous year, we all had a great time on opening night. We brought Dennis Tackett and his team from Dallas and all other people, and it was an extremely happy day. And the museum has been busy ever since. The sky's the limit. The only problem with me is I shan't live for another 50 years. I doubt it. But we shall keep going as hard as we can. If you're determined, you can really achieve anything.